Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Dr. Ryan Simmons. Today, I'd like to talk to you guys about Microsoft Japan and the recent results from their less than 40-hour a week work schedule. All right, so got to acknowledge something a little obvious in the back of the screen here. I am finally getting something to keep my monitor up off of the desk. I got really busy with work this week and just haven't finished doing so. There's a lot to be done this week because next week, the wife and I are finally going on our honeymoon / anniversary. It took us a year, but we're finally doing it. So very happy about that. But it means that I'm very busy right now trying to make sure that I'm catching up for the next couple of weeks or so here. So I'm a little late talking about this subject. You've probably heard Adam Grant and a ton of other people that are in the business world talking about Microsoft Japan. So Microsoft Japan decided to try something out in having a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. Now that assumes that you're working about 8 hours a day and you're staying pretty productive. And what we did see is they were more than just a little productive. Productivity rose 40%. They worked 4 days, they got paid for 5, and they turned out 40% more work. Now, we didn't talk about quality, and usually what we see in these numbers from companies that have tried this is that productivity goes up, but also quality of work goes up. So the rework that happens when things don't go correctly or people aren't having conversations when they need to have them in a timely manner is that we have a lot of rework. In the case of Microsoft Japan and the other companies that have tried this, most of them have seen productivity go up and quality go up. So those are two great things. Other side bonuses of this, because you didn't have people in the workplace actually working, you had a decrease in the amount of pages printed. So there are other costs, of course, that go along with doing work. That's one of them. They printed 60% fewer pages because of this 1 day off. They also saw a 23% reduction of the amount of electricity used. And especially if you're talking about a tech company, although all companies these days tend to use a lot of electricity because we're all doing things electronically, that's still pretty huge for any company. So if we're looking at this for the average company, does it really work? Does this all translate? Because the numbers are great. Yes, we understand what supposedly happens, but what are the real pitfalls of this? Well, I found an article where a company called Treehouse, where this didn't work out so well. So they did the whole 4-day work week, and they noticed that really they weren't able to get enough work done, so they had to revert back to the 5-day work week. The fact that they had to go back to the 5-day work week was because they weren't able to reach out to all of their clients like they needed to. And in industries where you do need to be there to talk to clients, and that's part of your business, making sure that you're on call, it makes sense to work a 5-day work week. However, there are some things that could have been done to avoid this, and we'll talk about this in a minute. The other thing that should be mentioned is they didn't report on two different metrics that I think are very, very telling about how this worked. So yes, the amount of work didn't get done that usually gets done, but they didn't talk about productivity numbers, and they didn't talk about quality of work. Now, I can assume that productivity may not have gone up because they weren't able to get all the work done, but that may have just been a function of working with clients. If you are in client business, that's something you need to think about. Now, I will also say that a 4-day work week isn't for everyone. Some people work at different paces. Sometimes you do need to be at work, as discussed, and sometimes people just really like working at what they're doing. There are lots of people that love their jobs and would do it regardless of pay because they're just interested, and it's something they want to do anyhow. But for the majority of us, we're gonna want to see that our work is actually being appreciated. And maybe one way of doing that to make sure that we're turning out great work, that we're well rested and showing up to work ready for the next day, is to go ahead and tell us that we don't have to work 5 days a week. 4 days will be just fine. So I should mention that depending on the studies that you're looking at, the data that you're looking at, Americans tend to work on average about 44 to 44.5 hours per week. Now, this can vary widely from 60 hours plus to less than 30 hours. However, it should be noted that the average work week is expected by social norms and what we've set up through unionization around the turn of the century and the Industrial Revolution is a 40-hour work week. So already people are working above and beyond on average across the board in the United States. So with that, we should say that the 4-day work week is trying to move forward and take care of some problems that we tend to have in the American workplace. And it's talking about those two things that we talked about before: productivity and quality of work. So productivity and quality of work are functions of people being able to show up on time and do the work that's in front of them. This means that you have to show up refreshed. What we're seeing are increased numbers of people who are clinically burnout. Now that the DSM finally has burnout in the DSM and we're able to diagnose it across the world, we're seeing more instances of clinical burnout. This also is supported by what we're seeing by Gallup polls and other polls about engagement in the workplace. The number of engaged people in the workplace on average is about 30%. 30% of the whole. So that tells you that even though we're working a lot, we're unfortunately not able to get as much done, and we're getting frustrated, we're getting burnout, and we're not getting the quality of work, which increases the amount of rework, increases frustration, and then it just becomes that vicious cycle. So if you are a business thinking about the 4-day work week, there are some things you can do to make sure this works out the best for you. Of course, include change management in on any process that you're trying to update, policies, and just make sure that people are aware of what's going on, that you're quashing any rumors so that you're able to just be open and honest with your folks. They understand what's going on. Transparency is key to any kind of change like this. Another thing you need to make sure that you're doing is hiring productive people. Now, yes, we assume that everyone's going to be productive. We are not McGregor XY managers. We are definitely on a spectrum of who's more productive, why are they productive, and trying to help them out. But if we try to hire productive people, it's good work in, good work out, right? Otherwise, we get crap in, crap out from people who don't like to actually be productive. And if people are not being productive, they should be put on PIPs. They should go through a process. And if they don't work out, they should be moved out of the organization. That's just going to help you whether or not you start a 4-day work week. Another thing that Microsoft Japan did to help productivity rise in their 4-day work week experiment was to decrease the amount of time people spend in meetings. So hour-long meetings were cut down to 30 minutes. And 30 minutes in the hands of someone who's productive is golden. We also need to make sure that we're cutting out distractions. Now, this doesn't always just mean noise pollution, but just making the place a little bit more conducive to getting your work done. If you're always holding meetings, that means cutting back on meetings. If it means that it is a loud place for people that need to focus, try to make it a quiet area. Do what you can to make the space more productive for the people actually doing the work. And for the tree houses of the world, if you need to get work done in a certain way, you need to cover your days, make sure that you're talking to people about what days they can take off. Maybe you have a certain group of people that's gone on Monday and a certain other group of people that's gone on Friday, so that you can cover that client spread those 5 days, and yet people still get a 3-day weekend. Again, this is not a cure-all. It's a very interesting thing to talk about, and it's a very sexy topic right now. So I wanted to make sure I addressed it. I'm always been a proponent of the 4-day work week. It makes more sense for people to work less than 40 hours to make sure that we're getting things done, especially in a world where we're more connected to our jobs than ever. In the United States, we don't have laws to keep businesses from contacting us after hours. And that's why you get people who will contact you at all hours of the night from your business, even though things supposedly shut down somewhere around 5 p.m., 6 p.m. For manufacturing, this can be a real task. It may also not be for you. So make sure that this is something that you've talked about with everybody, that you've kind of avoided all of the common traps. And if you do have some issues with running a 24-hour facility, I'm sure that they can be adjusted as well. You just need to talk to people about the problem and try to fix the kinks in that system. A 4-day work week is achievable for most businesses, but make sure that you're doing it the right way for you. Again, if you guys have any questions about 4-day work week or anything related to this, please do go ahead and put that down in the comments. If you have any ideas that maybe I didn't address in this video, I'd also love to hear those. I'm debating whether or not I should actually take any video while I'm on vacation, because it's vacation, right? You need to take time off. This is what we're talking about, 4-day work week, taking more time off for yourself. So we'll see you next week. Talk to you guys then. Thank you. Like, subscribe. Until later.